quickly to ask, I've asked the thing before, but the question regarding Vallabh Sampradaya, their conception of Madhurya Rasa, I think you explained to me a long time ago, maybe once before, they have the idea of Nitya Sambhog. They don't, it's not prominent in that Sampradaya, Vipralamba Bhav. So I was wondering if you can expand a little bit more on that idea, and also how the idea of Bal Krishna comes in, the worship of Bal Krishna.
There's some confusion here. In Swami Haridas Sampradaya and in Bhakra Sampradaya, Radha Vallabhi Sampradaya, their conception is Nitya Milan, always meeting. But the Vallabh Sampradaya is more like us. For them, separation is important. In fact, their idea is that they have a pastime where there was some quarrel between Radha and Krishna, and Radhika had a necklace and it broke, and the pearls, they fell down to earth, and they were like her associates. And Radhika felt so much fire of separation from those associates, and Krishna felt so much fire of separation that the fire came out of Radhika's heart, and the fire of separation from those associates came out of Krishna's heart, and where the two fires met, a form appeared, and it was Vallabhacharya. That's the Swarupa of Vallabhacharya in their confidential bhajan. And so when he came to the world to preach, he was collecting the pearls of Radhika. It's like, so they were considered to be, he was meeting his eternal associates, like that. So they have this idea, and so actually many of their bhajans are in separation as well, and follow, because they're very into Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, Vallabhacharya wrote a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, whereas say the Nimbarka Sampradaya, Radha Vallabha Sampradaya, they have no concern with Veda, Vedanta, Upanishad, Shastra or anything. They just follow their Rasik Vani. Whatever is the realizations of the Rasiks about Radha Krishna's and Kunja Leela, that's their Shastra. But because the Vallabh Sampradaya of Vallabhacharya, actually he came to Braj and he was initiated into the Vishnu Swami line. So in Mathura, it's called the Gopal Peeth. And in the Gopal Peeth, there is an unbroken chain of acharyas since the time of Vishnu Swami. So Vishnu Swami is very ancient. Before Madhvacharya, before Ramanujacharya, very, very ancient. So the acharya who's on the Gadi now, in the Gopal Peeth, his name is, I think, Purushottam Maharaj. And he's the 84th acharya in the line of Vishnu Swami, in the Bhagavat Guru Parampara from Vishnu Swami. Yeah, for them, because you know many persons they come in, go there, and they think Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur made it up. Yeah. In their tradition, it's completely normal. It's the Bhagavat Guru Parampara going back 84 generations to Vishnu Swami. You know, so it's like it's totally not a new thing. It's completely shastric, and there are traditions which are focused on that. So. Because they put a strong emphasis on Shastra Praman. In fact, the whole community they're the Chaturvedi Brahmins of Mathura. And so in the Gopal Peeth, where Vallabhacharya took initiation, and that's why we say it's Vallabhacharya is in the Vishnu Swami line. Right? Even it is said that Vishnu Swami reincarnated again as Vallabhacharya. Yeah. So, because they're very shastric, they say that it's almost the only place in the world where all the four Vedas are constantly taught, because all the Chaturvedi Brahmanas have to study the four Vedas in that Gopal Peeth. And so then the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya, the main acharya, then became Vallabhacharya, and so they follow Srimad Bhagavatam. He commented on Srimad Bhagavatam, and there's a lot of separation moved in there. His commentaries about separation are very touching, very moving. very beautiful. So it's not the Vallabh Sampradaya who downplay Vipralambha Rasa. It's the Radha Vallabhis, the Nimbarkas, and Swami Haridas line. Now the other thing about Balagopal, in the Gopal Peeth in Mathura, which is the Gadi of the Vishnu Swami line, there's a deity of Balagopal there. So the role of Balagopal in that Sampradaya, actually their relationship is with they want to become like Sakhis to Radha and Krishna. And for them, they're not, and this is common to the other Sampradayas as well, there are not groups. There's Krishna and Radhika and all the gopis. They're not in, Chandravali, everyone, they're all together. They're not in individual groups separated by their different moods. They didn't hold hands with each other to try to commit suicide in the Jamuna, in groups. They're just all together, just the gopis. So, but in our Praman is in Srimad Bhagavatam in Rasalila, it says Upagiyan Mana Udgayan Vanita Shatayutapa. Krishna was singing and gopis were replying in a loud kirtan in the Rasalila, and he was relishing the nectar of the gopis in Shatayut, means hundreds of yutas. So the actual yuta, the word yuta is there in Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's our praman. But that's not something, it's really only Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who really put a spotlight on Srimad Bhagavatam and brought out all the nuances of Srimad Bhagavatam. So for them, they do the worship in Madhurya Rasa. Their main deity, what's the main deity in the Vallabh Sampradaya? Not Balagopal. Srinathji. So for them, Giridhari he's the Vigra of Madhurya Rasa, because he's a hero, and the Vira Ras nourishes Madhurya Rasa. And he was lifting the hill just to impress Radharani and so on. There are so many moods there. So their relationship with Balagopal is, usually in their temples they have Srinathji, but they have a Balagopal here as well. And so they turn their attention first to Balagopal to destroy all the concept of Aishwarya. And then they turn their attention. So it's just as we remember Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to prepare us to enter into the remembrance of Radha Krishna in Vrindavan, they remember Balagopal to remove the Aishwarya to enter into the Vrindavan, which is free from Aishwarya. Because a baby has no Aishwarya, right? They're helpless. So it's like, that's their kind of, the Balagopal plays the role of bringing them into the Naravat Bhav, and then they relate to Krishna in Madhurya Rasa. I mean, not just like people who are nominally connected with the Sampradaya, but the actual, the Acharyas and the serious Pandits and scholars and serious Vaishnavas in the Sampradaya.
Prabhuji, yesterday you were speaking on Gaudiya Darshan, this Vidvat Rudhi Vritti.
Yes.
So I had a question about this specific idea of Vidvat Rudhi Vritti. You were explaining, and in the book Gaudiya Darshan, thank you for translating so much, that for the understanding of Veda, then Vidvat Rudhi Vritti is required.
Yes.
So I guess my question then is, this necessitates Guru Parampara and Guru Shishya relationship and Pranipad Pariprashna Seva Vritti of the Shishya in order for that actually to be received. And I wanted to ask this because maybe it's implied that anything connected to Veda, even the Acharya writings of the Acharyas or the commentaries, or even just Acharya Vani, also is of the same nature as the Veda Shastra, that it is only understood in this way of Vidvat Rudhi Vritti.
Yes.
So even if Acharyas are explaining what they are understanding, like I say, you're giving an example of what is, the symptoms of Lobha, and what the Vidvat Rudhi explanation of that actually is. But even that explanation, which is the Vidvat Rudhi of the Vidvans, that also requires Vidvat Rudhi.
Yeah, because there are two aspects two ways in which you have to understand Vidvat-Vritti. One way is, let's take, for example, I gave the example in the class yesterday, Shrute Diyadapekshate. When you hear about the loving relation of the Brijbasis, in Vidvat-Vritti the word when you hear means when you realize. Because in Vidvat-Vritti there's no difference between the sound and the object. So if you heard it, you saw it. That's why it's called Darshan, Gaudiya Darshan. Okay? So in Vidvat-Vritti, that's the meaning according to Vidvat-Vritti. So you can speak about the meaning of a word according to Vidvat-Vritti.
Okay.
Let's give another, like we said, Gaudiya. The general meaning of Gaudiya means from that area of Gaudadesh, Bengal. But in Vidvat-Vritti, it means those who are fully dedicated to Radhika. We can give another example. Let's say you say, Radhivanod Bihari Ju. So Ju means like G. Right? So if you meet someone who's respectable, you say, oh, Prabhuji or whatever, you put G on the end, it's a no. Where the G or the Ju on the end of the deity's name comes from Jivati, he lives. So it's Radha Bihari, G means Jivati, he lives, he's not a statue, he's alive. So like this, all the words, those who are Vidwan, when they experience them, they experience what they actually mean. And they can explain it, even if you don't experience. So there's that aspect of what it means according to Vidvat-Vritti.
Right.
But what Vidvat-Vritti actually means, and I gave the definitions of the three types of Vritti. Remember that the Sadharan Vritti is the power of the word which causes the material intelligence to concentrate on material objects as they're conceived of in conventional, ordinary, worldly dealings. The Agurudi Vritti is even more contracted consciousness, so the meaning contracts even more and gives rise to the customs of Tamagun and Rajagun. But what was the Vidvat-Vritti Vritti? Vidvat-Vritti Vritti reveals Advaya Gyan. It reveals Advaya Gyan. So that's why I was saying that when Mahaprabhu said Kirtaniya Sadahari, Prabhupada said it was not his order to cover the whole world in sound which obscures Advaya Gyan. It was his idea that this kirtan should spread everywhere, that everyone would come into the state of Advaya Gyan, beyond duality, beyond the bodily conception. So the actual Vidvat-Vritti Vritti means that when you hear it, then you go beyond this duality, subject-object duality, because the subject is the ego and the object is whatever, the object of the senses, but this ego is not the self. The self is like a super subject witnessing this fake subject-object duality of the world. So when we hear Shabda Brahma, we get jolted, we get dislocated from connection with that ego completely. And then when we hear, the actual meaning of the words come. And so this is illustrated, because there was so much to say yesterday, I couldn't get it all in, but I'm going to have to do a course on this book, I think, like every chapter, every paragraph, maybe it could take a few weeks. We might do it online. It's worthwhile, it's really worthwhile. Because I want all the devotees in Chaitanya Academy, all devotees just in general, to imbibe the lexicon of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, because his vocabulary, the words that he uses, and the meanings that he gives to them are so precise and so accurate. You can start to have a real conversation about bhakti, which is clear. And if you take it into your heart, then the chitta will start to expand. And gradually the Vidvat-Vritti Vritti will take effect. So, we're discussing about the illustration of Vidvat-Vritti Vritti is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. That's the illustration. After he received Diksha in Gaya, Sri Prabhupada said that Diksha means Karna Bhed Sanskar. That is, when children get to a certain age, they have their ear piercing ceremony. So that sanskar is a worldly reflection of the transcendental Karna Bhed Sanskar, when the Guru, by mantra, pierces the material covering of the ear and exposes the pure chitta of the jiva. And then when the sound goes in, then the Vidvat-Vritti Vritti manifests the reality of that sound. So that's called Karna Bhed Sanskar. So that's what happened to Mahaprabhu in Gaya. So when he came back, On the first day when he arrived, he came to see Gangadas Pandit, he gave pranams to him, and Gangadas Pandit said, look, today you should not teach, don't even open your books. Even if Lord Brahma will come and tell you to open your books, don't open your books today. Just go home, recover from your journey, but tomorrow you should come back to the school and again teach. So then the next day, Mahaprabhu came there to Bharadwaj Tila. You know where the school is? Gangadas Pandit, Bharadwaj Tila. And do you know? No? Why not? You have to come on our program. We'll take you there. Do you know? Yeah. So he goes to Bharadwaj Tila there, and all his students come, and they all sit down, and they've got their palm leaf manuscripts. And so at the beginning of the class, you take the palm leaf manuscripts, and all the students together go, Hari! And open their books all at the same time. And when Mahaprabhu heard Hari, then he had darshan of Hari, because Vidvadruti Vritti. And so then he was kind of like in a trance, but with still some external awareness. And so they began to ask him questions, and he was explaining, according to Vidvadruti Vritti, every word denotes God. Every word. And so whatever question they asked, he always gave the answer Krishna. What's Varnashram Dharma? Krishna. What's the meaning of Dhatu, verbal roots? Krishna. But he was actually explaining how it is Krishna also. And of course the students couldn't understand anything. When he came down from his ecstasy, he said, did you understand anything? They said, no, we couldn't understand anything. So Mahaprabhu said, I'm sorry, I can't teach you the syllabus anymore. You have to go and find another teacher. But they were so attached to him, so they said, no, we don't want another teacher, so you just forget the syllabus, you just teach us what you want to teach us. And so then he started kirtan, Hare Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha, Gopal Govindaram Srimadhusudan. So, and then the Sankirtan movement began. But this pastime of Mahaprabhu, coming back to his Sanskrit school and explaining the meaning of every word, of every noun, of every verb, of every declension, of every conjugation, everything is Krishna. So then later that became Jiva Goswami's Haranamrita Vyakaranam, the Sanskrit grammar of the nectar of the holy name. Narayana, Dadbhuta, Yamvana, Kramaha. All the letters have come from the form of God. Why are the letters arranged like that? Ka, ka, ga, ga, na. First the gutturals, because the Supreme Absolute Truth has a throat. So the first sound comes from ka, ka, ga, na. And if you read that's going across. If you read the letters going down, it goes from the guttural to the palatal, to the retroflex, to the palatal, to the teeth, and to the lips. So the sounds come ka, cha, ka, ka. Ka, cha, ka. Ka is a palatal cha, and retroflex ta, and then ta on the teeth, and pa with the lips. Ka, cha, ta, pa. Gayana nama. Like this. So all the arrangements of the letters in Sanskrit, why? Because the Supreme Lord has a mouth, so every sound, every letter even, is based on the Swarup of God. So, and it goes on, it's very, very, very fascinating subject. But this is the illustration of Vidvadruti Vritti, and so it's the purport of Vedanta Sutra. Because the very, very important sutra of Vedanta Sutra, Chara charo vyapasrayastu syat tad vyapadesho bhaktastad bhava bhavitvat. Because the Supreme Lord is the self-existent basis of all moving and non-moving living entities. Therefore, every word primarily denotes God and secondarily the object according to conventional vision. Tad bhava bhavitvat. But you will realize this in the future when your sadhana is mature. So that's the sutra of Vedanta Sutra, which explains the Vidvadruti Vritti. Because for an ordinary person, all sounds make him go in Maya because he has Bhogya Darshan. But if the devotee has a Seva Vritti and he's hearing from his Guru and his ear is pierced, then after that, not only Shastra, but all sounds will speak of Krishna. So for the person in Maya, every sound conceals God. And the person who's free from Maya, every sound reveals God. Every sound. And so that's why we have instances like Mahaprabhu's dancing at Rath Yatra and Yakho Mara Hara Sever. This is a mundane Prakrit Alankar Shastra. But for him it was Radha Krishna Lila. Because every sound is, for a person whose ear has been Karnabhed Sanskar, the ear is pierced, every sound reveals Krishna. That's why Prabhupada used to say that if a pure devotee is speaking, then even if he misquotes the verse, he's still correct, because he's transmitting Shabda Brahma. And if a person who's in Maya is speaking, if he quotes the verse exactly, and the verse number, and the chapter number, and the page number, and the ISB number, ISBN, he's still wrong. He's still wrong. Because his vibration is the Prakrit Shabda, it's not Shabda Brahma. And it's coming from the Jadakash, material space. It's not coming from Paravyom Chidakash. So yeah, your question, you're exactly right. Don't take Vidvat Ruddhi as just another, well, this is another set of meanings. Another set of meaning is included, but actual Vidvat Ruddhi is the experience of Advaya Gyan. Yeah.
So the first verse of Chatur Shloki, Vashamevagri, the intention here was he was saying this is Vidvat Ruddhi. That there's nothing but God before, after, and end.
Yep.
That's the actual meaning then of it.
Yeah. Ahameva sameva dre nanyad yat sarasa param paschadayam yadetascha yovasishyeta sosmyaham. Krishna is saying, in the beginning, before the creation manifest of subtle and gross causes and effects, only I existed. And in the end, when the creation is dissolved, only I exist. And in the middle, when everything is manifest, only I exist. That's a surprise. That's a surprise, yeah. So when you realize that, then every word that's describing everything, the primary meaning of it has to be a name for God.
Yes.
Right? So when the Karbein Sanskar comes, because that vision of Ahameva Samekra, that is the Advaya Gyan. There's no duality. And so then you understand all the meanings of words according to Advaya Gyan. And that's Vidvat Ruddhi.
So,
Yes,
yesterday you were saying that it's both directions, that the speaker has to be a qualified speaker, and also that the recipient has to be a surrendered recipient to actually have that exchange.
Yeah.
But certainly we see some pastimes exist where the recipient doesn't appear to be surrendered, but somehow the speaker's potency just shatters everything and goes right into them and shakes everything. So I have a question in regards to surrender. Is surrender, for those who are still in the conditioned state, is surrender something that can come and go? Are there temporary experiences of surrender that can exist where there's some true surrender and there's some true reception, but somehow due to some offense or some mistake, there's some disconnection from that position and then mercy stops flowing?
So, there are definitely degrees. There are definitely degrees of surrender. And so, according to the degree of surrender, some power of that Shabda Brahma will be received and have an effect and make a sanskar in one's life. But as we mentioned, if there's some obstacle, then you get Parjatya Gyan, or maybe you have some like glimmer of realization, but it's mixed or distorted. So there's Vikrita Gyan, distorted, Sankiran Gyan, mixed, contracted, and so on. So there's only the clear vision from the person who is fully surrendered. Now, the person who is not fully surrendered, he may make offenses and he can have a relapse, of course. And even a person who is fully surrendered, if they make offense to a great devotee, they can also lose. You know, Srila Rupa Goswami Pada said, even someone who got in the stage of rati, if he makes an offense, his rati will wane, or it can go to a lower rati or whatever, like that. So that possibility of regression is always there. So that's why, you know, Prahlad Maharaj, there are so many great prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. We couldn't go into so many of them, we didn't have time. But Prahlad Maharaj says, "Oh my Lord Nrsingadev, I'm not afraid of your ferocious teeth, of your blazing eyes, of your tongue, which is like a dueling sword. or the flames coming from your hair. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm afraid of bad association. Because by bad association, our vimukata it comes. So even if you become Krishna Unmukh, you turn towards Krishna, but by bad association you become Bahimukh, Vimukh again. And this is why when the residents of Kulinagram, they asked Mahaprabhu, please give us some instruction. So he said, Prabhu kohe Vaishnav seva nama sankirtan dui koro Shri Kripavishi Krishna charan. You should chant Harinam and serve Vaishnavas, and by this you'll quickly attain Shri Krishna's lotus feet. So they went away. Then they were thinking, but who's a Vaishnava? So then the next year they came back. And they asked Mahaprabhu, well, who is a Vaishnava? And he said, what did he say? Asatsanga tyage Vaishnavacha. Stri sangha eka sadhu Krishna bhakta. The first characteristic of a Vaishnava is he gives up asatsang. This is the first characteristic. Because if you do asatsang, then even if by the mercy of Guru you are slowly becoming Krishna Mukh, you will become Krishna Vimukh. It will awaken that. So, yeah, it's dynamic. You know, either it's like a bucket with a hole in it. Either you're filling it up or it's running out. So you have to keep filling it up and you have to plug the holes. Right? Otherwise, yeah. Another question.
What if by propulsion and compulsion of material obligations, things that we make our own decision about, certainly it's our own choices, but we're constantly in that association through the circumstances of the material responsibilities we've taken on and the jobs we do.
That's why Prahlad Maharaj says, Naivodvijay paraduratya vaitarandas tad virya gayana mahamrita magna chitta. So many Prahlad verses are coming. So Chaitatovi mukashetasa indriyata maya sukaya baram udvahatovi mutan. Prahlad Maharaj is saying, oh my Lord, I am not afraid of the river of material existence, because wherever I go, my chitta is nimagna. It's always immersed in the singing your glories. But I do have one lamentation. I lament for those persons who are bewildered and they're carrying the heavy burden of self-created responsibilities. If we say, I've got all these responsibilities, you put them on your head. Krishna didn't give them to you. You did it. Say, Krishna, I'd love to serve you, but I got to take care of all of these responsibilities you gave me. No, you didn't give me. I gave them myself. And so this has to be, we have to face that. The other example is that Prahlad Maharaj gave when he was talking to the children. He said, look, you have 100 years, 50 years are wasted in sleep, 20 years in education, the last years of your life you're old and useless, you don't have energy, you're attacked by so many diseases, it's very difficult to do bhajan. So you've got this little time in the middle, but what do you do in that time in the middle? Then you make wife and children and house and pets and family heirlooms and shoes and furniture and cars and everything, and it just completely. And so he gives the example of the silkworm who's wrapping himself in the thread of silk, and he's making a cocoon that becomes so dense, it's like, I can't get out. Right? So these are the examples Prahlad Maharaj is giving. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's so powerful. Why? Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said, you must read the teachings of Prahlad Maharaj 108 times. Because the first, 107 times, we don't get it. We hear it again and again, but we just don't get it. It's like, yeah, Prahlad Maharaj is talking about all those guys over there. Yeah, he's talking to us. So we have to think about that. We have no obligation. Our obligation is only to Krishna. Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur gives a very beautiful explanation about how a devotee takes shelter of Guru fully. He says that by the mercy of a sadhu, the person comes to know that everything around him is in a state of decay. Let's say if someone dropped you in the middle of the ocean somewhere, right? So you've got everything's liquid. Everything's liquid and everything's moving. And there's nowhere for you to find shelter. There's nowhere to stand on, right? So then you're just desperate. because there's no support anywhere. It's all liquid and it's all changing, and you're drowning like that. Well, guess what? Everything's liquid. What I mean to say, what Prabhupada is saying, is everything is in the state of decay. You know, if you, I don't know if you've ever seen, sometimes someone sets up a camera in a forest and they leave it there for a year, and then they play it back in five minutes, and you see the trees are growing like crazy. They become green, and then they become yellow, and then they become brown, and everything falls off, and then it's desolate, and then again it's like that. So just look at the world around you, everything around you, all the people around you, all the situations around you, right? Now just put it on fast forward. And what is it? It's exactly the same as an ocean. It's like a liquid. Everything is just decaying. Everything is just disappearing. There's no shelter. There's nothing to hold on to, nothing to grip. There's no support anywhere. We're literally drowning. But because, just like an insect who is born in the morning and dies in the evening, for a day, for him the day it's a whole lifetime. So, but because we're not seeing everything in that fast forward, we're not seeing with the foresight the nature of the future. Atmasainesu satyopi. In Shukadev Goswami says, your family members and your house and bank balance, all of these things, these are fallible soldiers. You go into war, you think you've got all your buddies around you, but as soon as you get there, they're all shot dead. You know? So he said all of these things, they're all fallible soldiers, they're all falling left and right, there's no shelter, there's nothing. And so, but Pashyamapi napasyati means even though they see, they cannot see. You see? So why is it that when we look at the world, we don't see this liquid with no basis, with no place to take shelter anywhere, just everything changing, and we're drowning? Why are we not seeing that? And the reason is the Bhogya Darshan. By having in our eyes the spirit that I can enjoy this world, we become blinded to what it is. So that's called pasyam api napasyati. Even though seeing, we don't see it. So when by the mercy of a sadhu, this Bhogya Darshan becomes not completely but just somewhat relaxed in its intensity, then the soul looks at the world and goes into a state of panic. You know, it's like nausea. It's like an existential crisis. It's like Jean-Paul Sartre, right? You know? Okay, okay, you know, right? A type of nausea, and he panics, and he cries. So Prabhupada Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said, when that Bhogya Darshan has gone, and you see the world for what it is, just a raw experience, a floundering helplessly in an ocean with no shelter anywhere, and then Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he quotes the Psalm 6.6 of the Psalms from the Bible. He said, then you will water your couch with tears. You will cry like anything. And because the Supreme Lord is merciful, at that time a pure Vaishnava comes into your life, and then you beg, Gurudev Kripa Bindu Diya Kore Dasya, and really take shelter fully. Without Sharanagati means a Sharana shelter, Agati also, without any other shelter. It is a Gati, it's a refuge, without any other refuge. One refuge, not part refuge, half-time refuge, Sunday refuge, full refuge, completely. And then when he takes shelter and he's serving, then when he hears a Harikatha, then there is the transmission of Shabda Brahma, and he becomes free from all dualities. So, I apologize if I hurt anyone's feelings. No, I don't. I just said. I don't actually. But I just said that in case you don't invite me back. Yeah.
So also you mentioned about Bhogya Darshan. So when a person does come in contact with sadhu, so like in the verse that says Tvam Bhakti Yoga Paribhavita, right? That Shruti Ikshita. So their darshan is not, because some people think maybe that darshan is going to be one day, like this epiphany will happen, and Radha Krishna will be dancing there before my eyes. So will you talk more about what is Shruti Ikshita, seeing through that hearing that creates darshan?
So here, Sudekshita Pat.
Yes.
First it means that he sees the path. First, by hearing, the devotee understands what he has to do. And then as he starts to follow the path and he goes on hearing, then his realization begins to manifest inside. So, because this question naturally comes up, because Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur was speaking about darshan, or everything's darshan, Sambandhagan is darshan, Abheda is darshan, Prayojan. Generally we think Prayojan is darshan, but the others aren't, right? But actually he says, no, it's all darshan, right from Sambandha, from the beginning. So, naturally that question will come. So in the commentary, I've written a commentary at the end. You may want to read the commentary first and then go back to the beginning. Huh? You don't have to. You can read through, but it may be that sometimes a person may read through it. It's like struggling, and when they get to the end of it, they didn't catch it so much, and then when they read the commentary, that will shed a lot of light on it. But maybe if you read the commentary first and then go to the beginning, you already have some pointers what to look out for as you're going through. I was just with the Acharya Bhagbazai in Mexico. He said, how did you translate this book? He said, I had to read this 5 times before I could understand it. So it's quite challenging. That's what Gurudev said. I've quoted Gurudev's. Gurudev wrote an introduction to it in his Hindi version, so I translated that in my introduction as well. And Gurudev said, even though Srila Prabhupada's churning of the subject of the sport at the beginning of the lecture is somewhat technically challenging. He said, but later it just seems as if a person is just freely distributing the treasures from the storehouse of his own personal bhajan. Very nice. That's a very nice comment. So what you'll see in my commentary, I give with Praman from Shastra to what degree the spurti comes in each stage of bhakti. And I touched on that yesterday. You can see in Srila Vishwanath Thakur's commentary on the verse, Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavantiritkhana rasayana katha. So here, this katha, mama virya, it has my shakti. What shakti? Samvidaha, samvid shakti. Only in prasanga. In the best type of association. If it's a general type of association with the sadhu in Vaidhi Marg, then by hearing from him, one becomes impelled to enter into bhajana kriya. But if it's prakrista rupain sangha, very excellent rasik sangha, then this katha has samvit shakti in it, and then what happens? Then bhavanti ritkana rasayana katha, it becomes rasayana katha. So it causes not only bhajana kriya, but it causes nishta. And he says in the stage of nishta, then you have the samvit, the realization of Sri Krishna's qualities. So that includes his form, because the kram is nam, rup, gun, aishvarya gun, madhurya gun. Then the madhurya gun comes in ruchi, and also the associates, realization of associates in ruchi. In the stage of asakti, the abhas of your own swarup. And then serving internally by that swarup is the sadhana seva sadhaka rupena to attain bhav, to actually realize fully the swarup. So in my commentary, I give the example of what's the difference between darshan in each stage, but especially the difference between darshan in the stage of sadhan and darshan in the stage of bhav. So there's a very important verse. In the Daksha Yagya, Daksha came into the assembly and Lord Shiva didn't stand up. So there was he thought he'd been disrespected because he's the son-in-law and he should respect the father-in-law. And so afterwards there's a discussion, well, why didn't Lord Shiva respect his father-in-law? And the answer is that Lord Shiva was in trance. And so Lord Shiva says, Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yadiyate Tatra Pumam Apavritaha. So the meaning is, he says that in the stage of Vasudev, that is Vishuddha Sattva, then Puman Apavrita, the Supreme Lord, is experienced uncovered. Apavrita, is uncovered. So in the commentary on this verse, Srila Jiva Goswami Pad raises this point. Well, if you can see the Lord uncovered, that also implies that you can see him covered. But what does that mean? Because if you see someone like completely covered, that means you don't see them at all. So what's the point? It's redundant to say you see the Lord uncovered if it doesn't imply that you see the Lord covered. So then he goes into that and he explains that if the Supreme Lord is seen reflected in the sattvic chitta, you see, because we have manas, buddhi, ahankar, chitta, the last thing. So when the ahankar is melted due to surrender, one has given up the ego, then the pure chitta becomes exposed. So this pure chitta is it's as sattvic as anything can be in this world, because chitta is mahatattva. You have the prakriti, and the first element to come out of prakriti is the mahatattva. So the mahatattva which is in the universe is called mahatattva, but the portion of that which is in your subtle body is called chitta. So the chitta has the characteristics swachatvam, avikaritvam, santatvam iti cetasa. It has three main characteristics. The first one is swachatva. So swachata, in all the acharyas have commented, Sridhar Swami, Jiva Goswami, Vishnu Thakur. Swachatva means Bhagavad Bimba Grahitvam, the power to catch the reflection of the form of Bhagavan. You see? And so Sridhar Swami also calls that purified sattvic chitta, he calls it upalabdhistanam. Now remember in the beginning when we gave the definition of the word darshan, it comes from drish dhatu. And drish means what? Avalokana, sakshatkar and upalabdhi. Upalabdhi, right? So upalabdhistanam, the purified chitta is the place of attainment of perception of God. It's upalabdhistanam. And Srila Vishnu Thakur, he gives another explanation of this Bhagavad Bimba Grahitvam, upalabdhistanam. He calls it upasana pitam. It's the upasana pit. In other words, we want to serve the Lord in the heart. Mantramaya upasana, swarasika upasana. But where does that take place? It doesn't take place in the post-egoistic buddhi and manas. This buddhi and manas have to be dissolved back into their cores, into the purified chitta. Ego has to be removed, and then in that purified chitta, that's where the upasana takes place. See, this is the difference between fake bhajan and real bhajan. The fake bhajan is with the evolutes, because Prakriti is evolving into evolutes. So that you have chitta, pran, sutra tattva, ahankar, and then manas buddhi. So the person is trying to use the manas and buddhi, which is a post-egoistic element, to do upasana. But that's not the upasana stan. That's just all egoistic transformation of rajas and tamas actually. So when those are cleansed away, which Mahaprabhu called it chaito darpana marjanam, that the chitta becomes cleansed of those lower evolutes, those grossifications of the chitta, then the purified chitta is upalabdhistanam. It is the upasana pitam. It is the Bhagavad Bimba Grahitvam. It has all of this. So all these things I'm telling you now, it's in my commentary. So maybe read the commentary first and then go back to the book. So there's the Kram Prakash of Nam, Rup, Gun, Parikar. So Parikar, Seva, Lila. That means Yogapit Seva Lila, and then Swarasiki Lila, like that, in order. And so that will begin from Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti. Now, we're coming back to that point. What's the difference between the darshan in sadhan and the darshan in bhav? So in the stage of sadhan, the darshan is the bimba. It's the reflection in the chitta. So it's not a direct experience of God. And that's what it means, the covered vision of God. But what happens when bhav comes? Shuddha sattva visheshatma, prema suryam suvat, ruchi bis chitta masrina. This chitta melts and comes under the control of the Swarup Shakti now. And that's when you have the direct experience. So sattvam visuddham vasudeva shabditam yadiyate tatra pumam pavrita. When Shuddha sattva enters in the chitta, it melts and you have a direct experience of God. That is direct vision. But before that, in the very sattvic chitta, in the stage of sadhan, there's a reflection, and that's called like the covered vision of God. So that's the difference. So it's darshan all the way through, but the quality of the darshan And the intensity darshan has stages,
Yes,
right?
clear.
And those stages, they develop more. Prem, Sneha, Mam, Pranay. And that's why at the end of the Katha yesterday I was saying, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said that because even in the gopis, they have a chitta vritti, right? And that chitta vritti is Samvit and Ladini is going on. But when Mahabhav comes, Swasamveda Dasha, that is the full development of Anurag. So the chitta becomes completely one with the vritti of Mahabhav. So now the entire chitta is completely one with Mahabhav. There's no other vritti. Now just for comparison with the gopis, right? In the commentary, I don't remember whether it's Ananda Chandrika or Lochan Rochani, but in the commentary it said there that just for comparison, the queens of Dwarka, their chitta vrittis don't become one fully with Prem. In other words, they have Prem, but there are other chitta vrittis going on as well. So if you compare the gopis and the queens of Dwarka, no, you can't. Because the gopis' chitta becomes completely one with the vritti of Mahabhav, and the queens of Dwarka, their chitta never becomes completely one even with Prem. So what to speak of Snehaman, Pranay, Rag, blah, 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 blah. They go up to Anurag, but they never go up fully, they never go to Mahabhav. So the gopis are far, far, far beyond. Don't think the queens, they love Krishna, the gopis love Krishna a little bit more. It's a really big difference. Eita param tanubrito bhuvi gopavadvo Govinda eva nikalatmani.
Rudabhava.
Yes. Govinda eva nikalatmani Rudabhava. Nikala atmani. In all ways, their entire atma, that means their entire buddhi, manas, chitta, everything, pran, becomes one with Rudabhav. And so then it overflows into their pran in the body, and that makes the Sudipta Sattvic Bhav, and then it overflows from their bodies, and it becomes Yavadashray Vritti, affecting everyone else. So when their bodies become one with Mahabhav, now that's why you get Sringar Rasa. Right? Why does Krishna steal butter? He's not hungry for butter. He wants to taste the love. He wants to taste the love of the elderly gopis. So Krishna's not the kami. He's not lusty. He's premi. Krishna's not lusty. He's not kami. Krishna is premi. He is lover. He only wants to taste the love of the gopis. The problem is with the gopis is their bodies have turned into. They're made of pure prem, pure Mahabhav, and that's why Krishna wants to embrace them, and all the erotic leela comes. Right? But it's not calm. It's prem. So that's why our Param Gurudev said, Sringar Rasa is only in Vrindavan.
So you said queens, their prem goes to Anurag, but Swasamveda Dasha doesn't take place in them?
No. No.
So is it reflective, or it's just a state that they can reach Anurag? So the other quality of Anurag, that everything appears new, doesn't take place in them in the same way that it takes place in gopis.
No, not in the same way. But, they have Anurag, and they have the symptoms of Anurag, like Prem Vaichitya is a symptom of Anurag. That's there in the Mahishi Geet. Whole Mahishi Geet is like they're actually in Dwarka, playing in a lake, in a pond, ornate pond, with Krishna splashing water and playing with him. And they become so overwhelmed in that prem that they feel that he's gone far away, and they're talking in separation. So that's the Mahishi Gita. So in Bhagavatam, that's the most direct expression of Prem Vaichitya. The Prem Vaichitya of gopis in Bhagavatam is not really touched. But the Prem Vaichitya of the queens is given, so we can think, Kim Uta, if the queen's Prem Vaichitya is like this, then Kim Uta, what to speak of the gopis. But those are symptoms of Anurag. And when Anurag comes to its highest degree, that's the second meaning of Yavadashray Vritti. It doesn't always mean affecting others around. But Yavadashray Vritti means the ashray of Anurag is Rag. And Rag is the state dukam apyadikam chitte sukhattvena eva rajyate, where that which is ordinarily the cause of pain becomes the cause of happiness. So the ultimate cause of pain for a woman who's sumaryada, who very strictly follows all the rules and regulation of Vedic society, is to be seen by society to be unchaste. So when that greatest pain, which is worse than death, worse than being placed alive in a blazing fire, becomes a source of happiness, that means that anurag has taken shelter of its base, rag, to the fullest degree. And then it turns into Swasambheda-dasha, yes. Queens cannot do that. Impossible. Impossible.
Because by their very nature, they're married. So
they follow Maryada.
Yes.
They're within Maryada.
Yeah.
All their love is within Maryada.
Yeah.
It does, so this Mahabhav is necessary to transgress Maryada. That's why Uddhav always is glorifying the gopis. Ya justa jam swajana ayapatam chahitva. Asamaho charan rendu samaham vrindavan ekimapi gomalattaushadinam. Ya justa jam. Very difficult to go up. Aryapata, the Aryan path. Swajanam. And your family members. You disappoint every member of family and every member of society. You become a pariah, you become an outcast. You'll be ostracized, excommunicated from everything forever. All the people who loved you and cared about you and invested in you, you've let them all down, and all your ancestors as well, because in Vedic society you have this weight on your head at every moment, Kula Gaurav.
All the family.
Yeah, the dignity of all your ancestors. So you can, at every moment in your life, you have to act in such a way that at least you maintain the fame of your ancestors and forefathers. And if you can increase it, that's great. But don't in any way tarnish their good reputation. It's the worst thing. And you'll go to hell as well. So you can, no one is going to do that in society. But the gopis do it. Why? Because the anurag takes shelter of its own shelter to the fullest degree. Yavad ashray vritti. And then that causes them to do that. And then anurag turns into Mahabhav. So there's a massive difference between the queens and the gopis. And so what Srila Prabhupada was saying is that when that anurag comes to the highest state, it turns into Mahabhav, becomes Swasambheda-dasha, it becomes Prakashita, and so on. Then when you see Krishna, that's Gaudiya Darshan. Huh? If that Vritti of Mahabhav has not pervaded all the body and senses, then you cannot have the darshan. Because as long as up to the stage of anurag, the Vritti of the anurag is in the chitta. But when it touches Mahabhav, then it goes out into the body, into all the senses. So then you can have darshan. That's Gaudiya Darshan. And then when Radha and Krishna, who are themselves in that state, unite and become Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and you see Gaudiya Nath Mahaprabhu, while yourself being in that state, then that's called Gaudiya Darshan. So that's that's the climax of his presentation. He goes through so many stages coming to that. It's just, that's why Gurudev said, once you get past the very hard and chewy part at the beginning, then after that, it's as if some mad person is just throwing out these treasures without any hesitation from the storehouse of his own bhajan. It's really amazing. Amazing. So look, we've already almost run out of books. We only have about 5 books left for the whole of New York. So I humbly request all devotees, please make an order like a big box of like 100 of these books to come here to Alachua and just distribute to everyone, and just come together and sit and read it together and discuss it, because you'll just dive in again and again. It's amazing. And Prabhupada's guitar is like a fire. It's practically, if you read a few pages, you just start trembling. Right? Is it true? Did anyone try to read? Right? It's true? No lie. Any other question? Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, if it's okay I don't want to change the subject from the Gaudiya Darshan fire, but today you were giving so generously the glories of Sri Purnamasi Yogamaya. And I wonder if you could give a little bit more light on some 1-2 mysteries about her. So she's like God Tattva, but she's also Parikar, so she must have some sthai bhav. She has some feeling of her own. So if you could say something about what's the nature of her sthai bhav, and Also, what's the nature of Sri Rupa Goswami's underground worship of her, Radha Govinda?
I'm just calculating now. How much to say and how much to hide. So, first of all, being an elderly person, even though because she has some Aishwarya Gyan, she has a knowledge of opulence, obviously, to manage the Leela. But as was illustrated in the Harikatha today, by associating with the Brijbasis, that just slowly gets covered and everything goes out of control for her. Which is very ecstatic. Then, so being an elderly person, she has a parental mood. She has a parental mood. So the parental mood does not exactly mix with Madhurya Rasa, but it doesn't mean that the parents don't approve of the Madhurya Rasa of their wards. If you're the guardian of someone, it's like a parent. They don't say it, but they think, oh, when he grows up, then he'll have a girlfriend. They kind of relish it, but they don't say anything, right? So even Mother Yashoda is like that. Yeah, she kind of knows, but she just doesn't know, and she doesn't say something. The example is given of Akrura as well. Akrura has Aishwarya Bhav, but he's an uncle, so he has some Vatsalya also towards Sri Krishna. And when he was coming on the way to Braj, riding on his chariot, then you can see in it said that, oh, now I am going to see the Supreme Lord, whose lotus feet are worshipped by Brahma and Shiva, who without shoes, those feet are wandering in the dust of Braj, following after the cows, and those feet which are decorated with the kumkum from the breast of Braja Gopis. So he's meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna, and he slowly goes towards Madhurya Rasa because of the influence of Braja. So the acharyas comment that, well, isn't this Rasa Bas? And they say, well, if he had spoken it out loud, it would have been Rasa Bas, but he was just thinking it. It was just in his thoughts. And that the parents or senior persons, they also take some pleasure in the romantic pastime, if you like, of their juniors in their heart, but they don't say anything, right? It's not something they focus on, but it also gives happiness, right? If any parent and their children grow up and get married, they're happy, right? It's also kind of, they feel the romance of their own child getting married or whatever it is, like that. So that is there. So Purnamasi, she has like a parental feeling, but with a great sympathy for Madhurya. She has some Aishwarya, but the Madhurya of Braj is so intense that even the Aishwarya becomes very weakened. You know, there's a very beautiful verse. After Krishna has lifted Giraj Govardhan for 7 days and nights, then finally he puts Govardhan down, and he comes out from under the hill, and all the Brijbasis rush to give him blessings, to give blessings to him and to comfort him. Mother Yashoda wants to massage his hand because he's probably got pain, and she's kissing his hand and massaging and saying, are you okay? He said, yeah, Mother, I'm all right. He said, you're okay today, but what about when you're older? You probably get pain, because if you lift heavy weights when you're young, you're going to have real bad pain when you're older, you know? So when you're young, you think, it's okay, but then later you find out, I crushed a disc or something. So Mother Yashoda is making all these inquiries of Krishna. So Shukadev Goswami, he speaks a verse, and Jiva Goswami said that this verse is just like an ocean of prem. Yashoda Rohini Nando Ramas Cha Balinambara Krishnam Alinga Jujuhur Sadashishaha. So this verse, Yashoda Rohini Nanda, it says Mother Yashoda was embracing him, Rohini was embracing him, Nanda Maharaj was embracing him, and Balaram, they all came, group hugs. when he'd come out from under Govardhan, and they're all around him and they're embracing him. And it is said, Krishnam alingya jujuhu, and they're embracing him. Sneha kataraha, ashisha sneha kataraha. That's it now, remember. And they were giving blessings to him, and they were Kartara means like a kind of pain or torture. They were tortured, they were feeling the pain of sneha, affection. So when there's someone, if there's a person who you feel they can't take care of themselves, they're not adequate enough to take care, and you have to take care of them, then that's very prominent in the level of love called sneha. So his elder brother and his mother and his aunt and his father, they all feel like we have to take care of him. And because they feel like he's gone under this great duress for all these days, they're feeling pain. Their sneha for him is giving them pain. So the names are given: Yashoda, Rohini, Nando, Ramascha, Balinambara. In this order, it's in descending order. That means Mother Yashoda was feeling the most intense affection. Rohini was feeling the next most intense affection. Nanda Maharaj was feeling the next most intense affection. And then Balaram was the fourth level of intense affection for him. He's also feeling Ashishasnaya Katara, the torment of intense affection for Sri Krishna. Now, Shukadeva Goswami is saying, Ramascha Balinambara. In regard to Balaram, it says Balinambara, he's the best of those who have power. And it indicates that Balaram has Sambit Shakti. He's completely enlightened. He knows that Krishna is God. He has all Tattva Gyan. And knowing that Krishna is God and that he has, and Balaram has all Tattva Gyan, that means that Krishna could not have experienced any inconvenience whatsoever by holding up a tiny little hill for a very short time, only 7 days. Right? It's nothing. For God, it's nothing. It's nothing at all. But so Balaram, even knowing that Krishna is Bhagavan, due to the intensity of the emotion in that moment, Balaram was feeling Sneha Katra, torment, the pain due to intense affection for Sri Krishna. Right? So if Balaram, who is Krishna himself, his own first expansion, who is actually the Adhistatri Devata of Sandini Shakti, the entire Dham, if his feeling of affection for Krishna can eclipse his knowledge of opulence in that moment. Why not Purnamasi Devi? Right? Of course. So just because she knows what's going on and all of these things, doesn't mean that she's devoid of feelings. Because it's just, that's the nature of Braja. So you see her as above, but having the sympathy for Madhurya Rasa. At the same time, you see her as knowing everything, but at the same time not being like Gurudev used to say, that Prahlad Maharaji just about barely fits in the definition of Anyabhilashita Shunyam by the skin of his teeth. Why? Because he serves the Lord, but he doesn't actually serve the Lord directly. He serves him by preaching to others about him. Gurudev used to say, has Prahlad Maharaj ever given Lord Nrsingadev a cup of water? No. Did he fan him, feed him, massage him? No. Because he's Lord, he's never thirsty, never hungry, never tired. He's completely Atmaram. So he glorifies him, he remembers him, and he preaches about him to others. Like that. So, but anyone in Braj, whether it's Balaram or Purnamasi, even having all knowledge, they can't be like that. Their affection drives them. They feel pain of Krishna's slightest discomfort. Like that. So you should reconcile it in this way. Why is the Yogamaya Purnamasi Devi in the Yoga Pit? Because the Vrindavan Yoga Pit is the mantra Mayupasana Pit of the Gopal Mantra. Right? So in the Gopal Mantra, there is a dhyan, Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada Srimat Ratnagar Singhasanastho. So that dhyan mantra is for the Vrindavan Yoga Pit, and that is the exact place of the Vrindavan Yoga Pit. Sisi Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prastalivi Sevyamano Smarami. So there are 2 syllables at the end of the Gopal Mantra. And these two syllables indicate Yogamaya. So, because we want to surrender to Sri Krishna, but how will we arrive there? So ourselves, the first syllable represents ourself, and the second syllable represents Chit Prakriti, our own spiritual nature. But the two syllables together, according to Tantra Shastra, they're a name of Yogamaya. So at the end of the mantra, you take shelter of Yogamaya, and Yogamaya is Agatana Gatana Pratiyasi Shakti, the power to make the impossible possible. So it's impossible for us to be there in the transcendental aprakrita supernatural Yoga Pita Vrindavan, but you say this mantra, Yogamaya takes you and you're there. And then that becomes mantra city. So this is why Yogamaya is there. The significance of this place, Vrindavan Yoga Pit, and its connection with the Gopal mantra, very important. Yes? Me?
Nasti Prabhu, just first syllable is self.
I'm recording and everything. That's why I was calculating what to say, what not to say. Just take Sanket. I'm giving some hints.
Yes.
Just take the hints and be satisfied.
Yeah.
We're not going into these things publicly. Okay, are we done for today? Yes?
Never.
Okay, then, if you want to, all you have to do is come to New York. Just come to New York. You know, on Facebook there's a page, Chaitanya Academy International. All the programs are there and all the news of things going on around the world. And there's a YouTube channel, Chaitanya Academy YouTube, as well. So please subscribe, join, and if you can, we're making parikrama every spring and autumn. Navadip Dham parikrama and Vrindavan retreat in the spring. This year is going to be very special. We'll make the Navadip Dham parikrama a little bit earlier so we don't mix with the big crowds that arrive closer to Gorpani. Then we'll come to Braj and we'll stay at Govardhan, and there's going to be a 7-day Harikatha retreat at Govardhan. There's this new like auditorium by on the Yatipur side of Govardhan, and there are rooms there for more than 200 devotees to stay. And so we'll have a Harikatha festival for 7 days, and there'll be 3 speakers, just myself, Achutala Bhatta Goswami, and Pundarika Goswami from the Radharaman temple. So Harikatha all day, 7 days, will be very nice. Immediately after the Navadip Parikrama at Govardhan.
What is the dates that you're doing early? Early dates?
We'll look it up.
I don't remember exactly. It
September?
means no. This is in the spring. The end of February, beginning of March. So we'll post them soon. We're talking about 2024. So coming up this year in the autumn time, there's usually we have Kartik parikrama during Kartik. So you're most welcome to come and join us in Anand Dham for parikrama and Harikatha for 1 month, the whole Kartik Vrata. It's a very, very edifying experience every year. Gurudev wanted us that we would follow Kartik Vrata strictly every year and be in Sadhu Sangha. So we try to do this. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Bol.